Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. 9:40 exactly. We have online Professor Mohammed Haroon, Senior Researcher at Al Jamaa, and we're looking at the registration of Muslim marriages bill, which is up for its first reading. The amendments to the Maintenance Act is with the Portfolio Committee on Justice after getting support of all political parties in a plenary debate. And the amendments to the Divorce Act has received a compliance certificate that it meets drafting rules of Parliament and has constitutional muster. Now, that's a lot that I've just said in my opening statement. We're going to have Professor Mohammed Haroon unpack that for us so that we can understand what exactly that means. How soon is it that, ordinary people like you and I can then go to the courts, and we will then be treated in a way that we understand what our rights are and where we move forward as far as perhaps maintenance and divorce issues are concerned, and how this ties in with Sharia law, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to you, Professor Mohammed
Wa alaikum
Haroon.
salam. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. And thanks for this opportunity. I think first,
Okay,
yeah,
over to
okay,
you,
carry on.
over to you.
No, fine. Yeah, I think, well, in terms of the registration of the MMB, as we would call it, the Muslim Marriages Bill, is, of course, it's based on years of struggle, as you and I know. Over the years, many of our compatriots, our shuyukh and the legal experts have tried to see to the recognition, but for many reasons, this was not possible. And of course, when the Women's Legal Center took up the issue in High Court, it succeeded. And of course, this was part of the background as to why Al Jamaa sort of stepped in. Of course, Al Jamaa, basically represented by Honorable Hanif Hendricks, tried his bit the moment he stepped into Parliament to address this specific issue, partly because two things. One, that Muslim marriages has never been recognized, and as a result of that, our women and children all basically suffered all sorts of indignity. Of course, the community at large did too, but these specific groupings have of course encountered many difficulties. They lost homes, they basically lost their assets as a result of the non-recognition. On top of all of that, as part of the sort of the insult that had been sort of meted out, is that the women were regarded as whores, and of course the children as bastards. And this had to be remedied, this had to be changed, and this is where Al Jamaa basically stepped in. So,
Okay,
yeah,
when you talk
okay.
about that, just going back to your previous comment, women being regarded as whores and the children as bastards,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to put
sad.
it lightly, um, did this relate to the multiple wives, the second and third wives, or just to the only wife in that relationship, even just as the first and only wife, but because our marriages were not recognized,
Mm-hmm.
that's how we were viewed.
No, indeed, it's just the monogamous sort of marriages as such. So let's not even talk about the polygynous or bigamous relations. I mean, that was a totally that sort of is a spin-off of this. So even in basic monogamous marriages, none of these were in the colonial period, in apartheid period, and even during this democratic period. I mean, all of us who are basically in marriages, according to Muslim rights, basically are not recognized. And this is where the problem basically is. And it is for this reason that this has been addressed with this bill being put through the parliamentary system.
Okay, so
Now,
going forward, yes, what
mhm,
happens next? And
okay.
I
So,
remember, just you can respond to both. I remember in the past when you were married, when you were married via Sharia law,
yeah.
when you entered into a Muslim marriage, you still then had to go to court just to cover yourself to have a civil marriage as well. Would that still be the case? How does that scenario change?
Okay, there'll be a change in the scenario, but before I sort of basically just come to that change, is that I think the sort of the party put forward basically one specific important bill that is known as the registration for the Muslim marriages bill. Now, this is what we call a minimalistic bill. In other words, it is not cluttered with any other legal issues. In other words, when we talk about maintenance, it does not sort of basically, this bill is just there for pure recognition and basic regulation and for protection. In other words, this bill is an entry into the other bills or other acts that will have to be amended. You mentioned early on, for example, the Divorce Act that will have to be amended in accordance with or in relation to this specific bill. And so this bill is an important entry point, and that is the reason why it needs that first reading. And after it passes its first reading, then sort of the other acts that have already been amended, for example, the two that you had mentioned, have been amended and will find them the way into Parliament, for the first reading as well as the, as such. But then it also affects many other sort of acts as well. But we're not going to go down that road at this point. So what it essentially therefore means is that the the moment the Parliament accepts this particular MMB, then it means us, you and me, and everybody else who are married will be automatically recognized. That's the first point. Secondly, we just have to go to Home Affairs and get the certificate, basically to say that we are married within South
Okay.
African
All right.
legal system.
That is
Yeah,
that is
according to
very,
the
very
right.
important.
Mm.
That is very, very important. That is what we need to hear. Just give us the situation there. So I go with my Nikah certificate to Home
Mhm.
Affairs. How
That's
does
correct.
that all play out?
Then they basically just have to issue a another certificate just to endorse that, to say that so and so this couple has been married according to Muslim right, but within the South African legal system. In other words, the legal system now recognizes it. And
And if I
so you
don't
don't.
do that,
Well, if you
let's
don't do that,
assume,
then
yeah, what
yeah,
happens?
yeah. If you don't do that, then you basically, uh, there might not be a major problem, but still it means that in the end, if somebody dies, if you die or your spouse die, whatever, then you might have to get the redress from the legal system. Whereas if you had gone there and you have that, in other words, the system will automatically then recognize you as a married couple in accordance with the Muslim rights. So uh, you then basically then follow through whatever needs to be done. But if you therefore have not done so, just to re-explain that, if you haven't done so, it means that you might have to go to court to basically fight your case in accordance to basically say that you were married. And of course, by then, the court would have already recognized that yes, you were, but you did not get your certificate.
Okay. When does this then happen for us
Well,
as Muslim men and women to go to Home Affairs to have our Nikah certificates endorsed?
You go as soon after you basically had conducted that sort of that ritual. In other words, after having performed at the masjid or at any venue, you can go the next day. You and your wife, or the wife and you, whatever, can then go and have it registered. So it's almost automatic. Of course, at the moment as we speak, the system must still kick in, so to speak, so
Exactly.
that all Home Affairs branches can be informed that this is what's going to happen now. So at this moment, it is not the case, and that is why I think the party has been concerned that each day lost means that indignity continues, and we want to basically bring a stop to that. We want to end that with the hope that the reading will be successful and for later, hopefully soon approved by Parliament.
Okay, my next question, my final question, our next guest is on standby.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, there's never enough time on this show.
I'm sure.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand that the bill provides for an opt out clause, so Muslims who follow an extra parliamentary policy are
Mm.
accommodated. What does that mean?
Uh, well, in other words, again, it's not a sort of what's it? It's not imposed on you. You have a choice. Like there are some people who still don't feel they need to still go to 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 court to basically be protected. They feel that whatever, in other words, having entered into Muslim marriage, they already have been legally covered as such, and they therefore can fight their case. So, in other words, there are these options for individuals because, as we know, there are those who are basically totally against this idea of a registration of the Muslim marriage board, and so they basically will then opt a different route or they have a different route. So in other words, it's not to say that we are not they're not being excluded. In other words, they spaces are granted to those individuals to not necessarily go through the system as we want it to.
However, there is then challenges, as you indicated earlier on, should one of the spouses pass away,
Hmm.
you'd have to go to court to prove that you were
Indeed,
in fact married him or her. So it does
of
become
course,
a bit cumbersome, does it not?
very much. And this is why the idea of this registration MMB is being put in place so that every stakeholder in the situation, apart from the couples, particularly our children, are also protected.
Okay, and to wrap up then, any important points you want to leave with us?
Well, basically, I think I think the just to say that it has reached this particular point, and I think we just look forward to positive outcomes, and I think the community need to stand and support this whole process. Partly, it is their interest, and not only in their interest, but in the interest of the generations to come. We need to also be
Okay,
mindful of them. Thank you.
timeline, and when you say the community needs to support this process, how is it that you want our support?
Well, almost immediately, just in terms of the idea that it is now going for the first reading, and then of course open for for comments later in the community. So the community, when comments basically when they open up for comments, we would like community leaders specifically who represent various groupings to basically stake their claim. In other words, to give their support and not to go into unnecessary issues that can make it more complex and problematic. So we want to just simplify the whole process and then hopefully move on because these, as we said, this particular bill will have impact on the other acts as well.
Absolutely. Mhm. And it will be implemented almost immediately or as early as next year because everything's now
Hopefully,
coming.
as early as next year. Yes, we
Okay.
would of course we would want it to have happened now at the end of this year before 2023 kicks in. But this was not to be, as you know, legal issues normally take long,
Yes,
and this is
absolutely.
part of the problem. Yeah,
Okay, inshallah, we will be following it. We'll probably get some sort of update from you early in the new year. Go well, keep us in
inshallah.
your du'as, and salaam alaikum to you.
And you duas too for us. Thank you.
Ameen,
So,
ameen. It is exactly 9:53. We're moving on to our final interview for the morning. We are going to be talking with Leanne Germanos. She is a campaign for change. And obviously, we're going to be looking 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children.